Hi, everyone, and welcome to Open Class, where we have Ali in the studio. Welcome.
Hi, Daniel. Nice
How are
to
you?
see you again.
Likewise. How are you?
I'm good. And you?
I'm good. Thanks so much. And by the way, thanks so much for coming on a couple of weeks ago. As you know, like a lot of people really resonated with you sharing your story in many ways. So it was super helpful.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that.
And several people have reached out to you, actually, right?
Yeah, that's true. I was like, I don't even know, like, if it was because of interview, but couple of people, yeah, like they reached out, but yeah, so we had a chance to talk.
Very well. Well, let's go through this. So as always, like nothing here is a medical advice to anyone. Just me and Ali sharing some general thoughts and comments that hopefully will be really helpful. So with that said, we have 3 questions to go over today. First one is from Bibita. Let's read this. Hi, Daniel. I'm asking a lot of questions lately. That's always good. That helps hopefully you and everyone else. One more query. I try practicing mindfulness. It is helping me the last few days, but when it's too late, or about 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., I get desperate. I pop a benzo in desperation. I wonder, will I ever overcome insomnia this way? I get too desperate and my fear of not sleeping reaches peak after 2 a.m. I'm helpless in addressing my hyperarousal at that time. So, the first thing that comes to my mind when I read this is that, mindfulness with sort of the right intent can be like so very helpful, but it can be tricky too, because when you are approaching anything with a sort of goal of like, I'm gonna do this so I am less anxious, so I sleep more, then it easily leads to a place where when you do sleep more, you think, I got it, I did mindfulness and it worked, which then becomes this effort. And then the next time you try to do it again, it didn't work, and then you just become anxious. That's kind of the first thing that comes to mind. And the second thing that comes to mind here is something very practical, which is like, there is sort of like this 2 a.m., 3 a.m., like if I reach 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., then that's it. I'm not going to sleep for sure. So it becomes this like so much anxiety associated with the time for no real particular reason. And I think it could be just so practical and easy to just like maybe not know what time it is could be so helpful. But those are my immediate thoughts. What are your thoughts, Ali, when you hear this?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you, and especially regarding the time, because this can be really helpful when you like your mind always tries to predict like what time is it and how much time you're left like for sleeping. It might like turn into counter effort itself, like when you start avoiding it on purpose, then every time you accidentally look at time, then you think, okay, this night is ruined because I looked at time. So I was just like, I would be careful with not turning it into absolute counter effort, but in general, not knowing time, it's like really helpful, because then you like you just can like take it a little bit easier, like this problem, because you don't know exactly like where you are in this time, in the time scale. So that's one thing. And about mindfulness and all this kind of like pressure building like throughout the night, if it's something related to this kind of like physical sensations, that might be also like a reason why you get scared. And that was one of the things I was getting scared as well. Like it was not the night itself, but it was more like how I will feel during the time, because I had already experienced that. It was like, okay, I was like, my heart was like pumping really fast, and like I couldn't fall asleep, and my hands had weird feeling and so on. And I think there is like nothing better than, at least for me, is just like sit through this. Like I just with this kind of like empirical evidence, if you just like let it be, you don't try to kind of like intervene with this kind of like fighting this anxiety and so on. So if you just like sit there and you just like allow like the whole experience like just overwhelm you, but not like interacting it in a way, just trying to make it easier or somehow, and then I just know that it always goes away. It might take like 20 minutes, it might take an hour and so on, but at some level you just like our like psychological state is never stable. So like it might feel now that this is the worst moment in your life or at night or whatever, but it always like goes away, you know. So I think like reminding yourself of these kind of like moments, that this will pass as well. And the thing is also like not trying to predict something. So I think this is like really valuable for person who struggles like with anxiety.
Absolutely. And you said something that I think is so important. There, it's like our psychological state is never stable, and that could, like, it's someone hearing this may be like, oh my gosh, mine is unstable, and it's like, for none of us, no human being has like a stable psychological state. But if we are in a, like, there's some psychological like discomfort and we try to stop that, that's when it gets really tricky. But just to know that it's unstable for everyone can be so helpful, because when you're in that tough spot, you know that this is also unstable, this will also pass. And when you sat with it and didn't make it pass, so to speak, it didn't seem like you made it past, then it just leads to peace of mind overall, right?
Yeah, and I think like regarding this letting go fear, which is also goes along with the story, you know, like you basically like the actual advice is like do nothing and just like let it go. And then there is question like, how do I do it? You know, like
exactly.
A lot of people like, you know, I really I understand it on this logical level, but I like just inside is just like there's something I cannot get. And I think is like it's quite difficult to explain it in a way that directly, you know, like this is what you need to do in order to not care. And I think that what for me worked, I mean, like worked in a way that what helped me understand it, this kind of like state of like giving up or letting fear go is actually like through some sort of like metaphors where you could feel similarly, but it was not the topic of sleep. So I would go for something like, for example, like imagine like when we were all kids and you were playing with other kids, and imagine there is like a really, how to say it, like a very nasty kid who is like you're playing with him, and then you see like he's cheating. You know, it's like you seem like you cannot really win this game because there is like, oh, this little kid is always like changing like rules or whatever, just do everything so that you will lose. Yeah. And then after some time, when you just see it, like, and then you realize, okay, I'm not gonna win here. So basically what you do is you just say like, you know what, I'm done with you. I'm bored with this game. So I just like, you know, I wash my hands and I just go, you know. And the moment when you do this, it not necessarily feels like, you know, yay, I you know, like I don't care anymore, but it can feel a little bit like sadness, you know, or maybe even slight irritation, but in a way that, okay, I give up. I don't really want to deal with this. It's not always like some positive emotion, but it can also turn into something like mini grief or something. But this is the part of letting go. Like you need to live through it, and whatever emotions happen during this time, when you realize like there's nothing you can do, you just need to see through this moment. You just need to wait until it's gone. So and then you might feel different sorts of like emotions. So it might be like relief, you might feel like better, but it also might feel like a little bit sad, and it's okay, you know, like. And this is like the part of letting go. It's just like not always trying to match some ideal state of mind where you just, okay, I don't care about sleep, and then that you think that you feel like you would feel amazing or whatever, some joy or something. It's not necessarily always true. So I think this is like slight, like maybe small like input from my side into explaining what does it feel to actually like let go fear and actually like not do anything. It's like giving up. It's like it might feel like, okay, I'm done with it, and I'm just like I just leave this game and this like nasty kid, and I just go do something else. I mean, something more important. Because in the end, like what I came to realization is that like in my life I have so many other problems or issues that are much more important than the sleep. So and I'm like I'm gonna solve them, but not sleep, because this is like sleep is not really like the actual issue. So it's just, you know, you kind of prioritize like what is more important to you. And yeah, I guess
it makes total sense. And that was a great analogy with kind of like that cheating kid in the playground, and then finally you just like I'm not going to play this game anymore. And yeah, I totally see that can feel exciting for some people. Like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna, I don't have to play this game. That's great.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't have to play this game. It feels a little sad, but
Yeah.
ultimately it leads you to a really great place.
Yeah. It actually, for me, it most of the time when I had this kind of like, I know, oh, okay, it seems like another like wave of this kind of like, I think I just need to sit through this, you know. I just like, I'm not super excited, but I'm not really sad. I'm just like, okay, you know, like I open the newspaper and read whatever, you know, just like whatever image. You just like, I'm just gonna wait, like,
Yes.
or see through this, you know, like, and then I don't have very specific, like clear, like picture, like, okay, like, if I do this, then I will fall asleep for sure. Like, this is not, you just take any result that might come along. So I guess if this is something what person like who was asking this question is like really struggling and having this fear, like that actually like is very like how to say, like gets the worst at 3 a.m. or at 2 a.m. So it's just basically knowing that it will pass. It
Yes.
always does. It might
Yes.
take some time, but you just know that you will be okay in the end of the day. It might feel unpleasant, but just like, you know, just sit through it. And
Yes. And I'll just quickly add to that before we get to the next one, is like when it passes, take note of the fact that it wasn't because you did anything. It was in fact because you let it be, that
Yeah.
or rather like it passed without you doing anything. I think that's just very good to take note of.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on to our next question. And thanks, Bibita, for sending this one. Hope this was helpful. This is from Tammy. She says, "Hi, I'm a 30-year-old woman, and I've had difficulty sleeping since I was a student around 10 years ago. I managed to get sleep fine, but in the second part of the night, I wake up 3 or 4 times and sometimes don't get back to sleep for a long time. I started taking a nap of 20 minutes early in the day to compensate, but still I'm constantly tired because of these awakenings. I'm anxious by nature, but I'm not anxious about sleep or being awake in bed, etc. I don't have any mind racing issues as such. I do snore and have mild restless legs. I had a sleep test done recently, and although I acknowledge I wake up for long periods, they say I don't have sleep apnea or restless leg problems during the night. My iron count was within the norm, but on the low side. My sleep hygiene is pretty good. I went on a retreat for 10 days recently where I was eating well with the regular bedtimes, etc., and zero stress. But I still had constant wakings in the second part of the night. Please help. Thank you, Tammy." All right, so Tammy, what comes to my mind immediately when I read this message is it can be really confusing when almost always insomnia is driven by like anxiety. Most people can clearly identify that I am anxious, and it's pretty clear that okay, the anxiety is probably driving my insomnia. But the reason for that is that, you know, fear and anxiety causes this hyperarousal state where we're like hyper alert, we're vigilant, we're kind of in like safety mode. But other things can cause that hyperarousal too. And one is just like puzzlement and wondering and kind of curiosity. So oftentimes you can be like, I'm not particularly stressed, but you're still wondering a lot about sleep. There's probably a little bit of anxiety there, but it can come across more as puzzlement, bewilderment, curiosity. And what we read is of someone who's, and this is very typical, someone who has like healthy lifestyle, you know, checking kind of like making sure this is not that, this is not this, but that kind of attention towards sleep, the preoccupation, etc., can still be the thing that fragments your sleep, etc., etc. So those are kind of my immediate thoughts reading this. But what do you think when you hear this, Ali?
Yeah, I also noticed a lot of analyzing of the situation. I think this might be one thing that contributes to the general issue. But I think like the main what she pointed out is that basically, yeah, like the main problem is that this early awakenings, and I think it might start coming from this kind of anticipation already, because you have like a memory that you usually like wake up at this time, so you kind of like start like expecting it and treating it as something bad. And I think like if you don't normalize it, then it will still be this kind of like undesirable state to be. But I think like a lot of anxiety can be kind of like dropped down by just like expanding your range what normal night can be, like even if you wake up at that time, this is still normal, because like I think people like from time to time, like they do have like this kind of like sometimes just wake up early and I don't know, just you don't want to sleep. But once you start like start considering it as a problem, and then you have like you get it fixed in your memory as something like this is not like really like thing I want to have in the future, then it will start like reoccurring. So it might be this case of basically kind of expectations.
100%. And to get a little bit more maybe practical and like sort of like how to speak more practical, let's say, then it is very important for everyone to know that waking up in itself is a completely expected. I mean, it's a completely normal part of sleeping. If you do this sleep study that actually you had, Tammy, then you see that people wake up many times per hour, like 4 times per hour is completely normal. But the difference between someone who has had a little bit of trouble with sleeping and somebody who hasn't is that the person who hasn't may wakes up briefly, rolls over, and doesn't even remember it. But if you had trouble sleeping, and if there's been this pattern, like it's the concern about early morning awakenings, then when you have an early morning awakening, then some part of your brain goes like, oh, there it is again. This is the problem. And then you actually are awake for quite some time and you remember it. So the waking up part, no problem. It is sort of like taking note of it and reacting to it and trying to make it go away, etc. That makes it an ongoing issue, if you will. Would you agree?
Yeah, exactly.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Perfect. And like you pointed out, like the analyzing is so natural, but it ultimately is like what often keeps the things going. So I think those were like the things here. And I just want to add again, like so many people say like my sleep hygiene is great, my health is great. And those are great things. But if you start kind of like living a healthy life so that you sleep better, or think of it in that regard, it is not that helpful.
Exactly. I would call it like just that you're playing in this kind of like by the rules that Insomnia sets for you, that okay, everything is checked, I did this, so now I'm expecting it. So that means that you're still in the game, you're still like trying to win there. But the point is that there is nothing to win, like really, like you don't have control over the game. It's like it's really like, so basically when you exit this kind of like a race, or thinking that there should be like some good or bad like outcome, either you win or lose, then it's kind of like you're still like shows that you still in that kind of state of this insomnia like thinking.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, again, I love that game analogy again. Steven says hi. Hi, Steven.
Hi.
Love the critique of Matthew Walker's book. Reading that book caused me a lot of sleep problems. Yeah. Did you ever come across that book, Why We Sleep?
Actually, like, yeah, I learned about it from you.
Yeah, okay.
I was reading,
I'm happy you didn't,
I wasn't reading it before, but I read like other articles, and all of them were like scaring you. It's like, why would you even write it? You want to help those people, like, doesn't really even make sense.
I'm so glad you came across that that episode, Stephen. All right, let's take a look. So our last question is from Anonymous, who says the following. Hi, Daniel. And by the way, Aliyah, I briefly took a look at this message. I think this. I'm really happy you're here with me, because I think your experiences will really be helpful here. So let's read this. Hi, Daniel. I hope you're well. I am. Thank you. My problem is what they call somniphobia. My mind is so obsessed with sleep that it can't think about anything. I keep thinking about how sleep happens, what happens to us when we're asleep, etc., which makes me anxious throughout the day. When bedtime approaches, I get very anxious and keep wondering whether or not I'll sleep this night or I'll stay wide awake. And when I close my eyes, my brain tells me, when are you going to sleep? Why we don't feel the moment when we fall asleep? What if you don't sleep at all? And unfortunately, that's what happens. I don't sleep well at night, maybe 2 or 3 hours. And if I wake up, I don't fall back asleep. I'll keep awake till the next day, which makes me very tired and anxious all day. The problem is I'm still a student, and this thing affects me badly. I can't focus well in my studies because of lack of sleep, but I stay positive even in this state. I avoid talking about this problem to anyone, and I keep it to myself, so I don't know what to do. Looking forward to hearing from you. So we have here someone who describes like this, like constantly thinking about sleep, almost obsessively, can't stop thinking about it, etc., etc. And so I'll let you start, Ali. Like when you hear that, what are your first thoughts and tips or thoughts? Yeah.
I think it's like I can really relate to this kind of like how he was describing this issue, because this is something I think many of us like went through, with just like the this negative talk regarding sleep is something that you don't want to have it, but it's still like kind of like jumps on, like on you when like when you have this kind of conditions, when it's okay, it's already dark and so on, and you start having associations with everything. It's very typical, and there's many people go through that. And I think when you like to work with this kind of thinking, I think you need to use a lot of this kind of like awareness in this case. Just understand that those are not like don't trust everything you think. This is probably like the advice, because like what your brain is trying to tell you is not always like the truth. Like the truth is just some sort of like I imagine it as some sort of like a software that is like is meant to keep you safe, like as you explained, this kind of like alarming system that looks for some real danger. But sometimes when it starts like working when there's no apparent like danger, and then this is something that you just need to take it as something that brain naturally does. It just wants to keep you safe, and just recognizing those thoughts that as something that is like that has nothing to do with the reality. They're not true, and if you can at the beginning just kind of like brush them off in a way that just like we start noticing it, and then and they're not like that strong yet, you can just say like yeah whatever, it's just, and brush them off. But sometimes when they get like too kind of like annoying or whatever, then you like what I was usually doing is actually like looking for ways how to prove it wrong, when say like what if you don't sleep, and I say like, well then I'm gonna I will be all right anyway, because I did it so many times. There's like it cannot surprise me even more, so it was more like that I was like disproving those kind of thoughts. And and naturally it was like dropping the anxiety, and then of course like letting things go, because you cannot really how to say, fully control your thoughts in a way that you're like, okay, I'm just gonna stop thinking about it. I'm gonna stop obsessing. You cannot do that. And and the more you try, like the more persistent they are. But once you realize that this is just part of just like of a program that runs automatically, it was created for so many like thousands of years, as like evolved just to keep you safe, and it always searches for the ways like to find like some potential danger. Just I wasn't perceiving them as something that is true,
Yeah, exactly. And to use that analogy is like, okay, we have the software program in our brains that is there, like designed for safety, always safety. Sometimes it identifies something that it's not really a threat, like being awake at night, for example. Like I like told, it keeps going about that. It asks me, what about you fall asleep? What happens if you don't fall asleep? What about that? And then the tricky thing is that you're actually kind of keeping the software going by trying to stop those thoughts, or by trying to, right?
Exactly.
And so weirdly, when you try to stop obsessing, that kind of keeps the loop going, and you keep obsessing. But when you do either like those thoughts happen and you kind of easily dismiss them, or you just take note of them, or you let them happen, you just distance yourself from them, then you're kind of telling the software that I'm not taking you that seriously. And then it kind of learns that, and it can like drift off to something else that is more appropriate for problem solving. But did that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, like to me, that's how I explain to myself that this is like, and I notice the same pattern happens in any areas I'm anxious about. It's just like I just see it's just the same. You just try to come up with the worst news ever. It's just that's the function of brain. Is like the quality you just need to take as it is. And when it comes to sleep, it just plays, the same kind of like runs the same program, but in reality, it's not like it's not true.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
And now, like on a like it's on a kind of side note there, it's like I think that's why if you're a a coach for an athlete or a business coach or this and that, it kind of all is the same thing, really. It's all about like an athlete may be like, why can't I do this? Like, what if and it's like the same thing. It's like the brain's always trying to present problems to you because it wants to help you. But oftentimes it's just the same educating it. That's not a real problem. I like you, brain. It's nice to have you. Nice to have the software, but I don't need it in this particular area. But yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, I think we have some live questions here. Ellie says, "Hi guys. So recently I've been trying to do enjoyable things before bed, but I find that sometimes I just prefer going to bed and forcing myself to sleep because I'm so exhausted. What should I do instead?" I think, when I hear this, my thought is like, I always teach about like, do something you enjoy before you go to bed. Make that like, it's nice if the night's time and going to bed is like something you kind of look forward to. But then the tricky thing can become, like we talked about in a last conversation about counter efforts, that if you try to force yourself to enjoy, then that in itself becomes something that takes away from being able to enjoy, right? So my answer to this becomes, if you find yourself thinking like, dang it, I don't have any energy to enjoy, so I'm just gonna sort of force myself to sleep, then I think you can go in a little bit different way. And instead of like forcing yourself, you can be like, yeah, I'm tired. I don't feel like doing anything enjoyable. So I can just still do something that's sort of kind to myself without any pressure. Like I can just be here. I can lay here and rest, or I can think about some memory that's maybe nice to think about, or I don't have to, maybe what I'm trying to say is like, you don't have to sort of force yourself to enjoy or force yourself to sleep or force yourself to do anything really. You can just be gentle with yourself, listen to your where you want to be, and be there and kind of let things happen. I was a little fluffy there, but what are your thoughts, Ali?
No, I think like exactly like forcing, like this what might be like a problem when a person like tries. But I was also like trying to understand like, okay, there should be something enjoyable, that because this seems like the cure. I need to enjoy, and that was the problem, because it created so much like pressure and expectations that I should enjoy. But it's, as I said, like in the first question, that it's not always enjoyable. Like when you have to, sometimes you just like. I mean, that's the thing. You cannot change your emotions. You cannot really control them, and you cannot force yourself feel certain ways. So if joy doesn't come naturally to you, don't force it. So it might be something that, for example, like when I had like very like rough nights and so on, and then I knew that I'm so anxious. And I know that I'm so irritated that nothing like really, I cannot even think about like enjoying something. But I know that, for example, like one of the things was like, if I would watch like, for example, one of your videos, and I know that there was like it eventually I could find something that, like, for example, you said, or one of the guests, and then okay, it resonates with me, and then it already like drops down like the general like anxiety like a background, and then I kind of already see a clear picture. Because when you're in this kind of like mode that I need to find this joy somewhere, and so you are in very deep in that program, you don't really see beyond that. So you don't understand like that you need to step out, look at it from far, and actually like maybe like if you cannot enjoy, but for example, like I know that like stuff that you were saying like made sense to me, and it actually helped me bring back this kind of like overview, like on the situation. Then sometimes I was just like, I watched like one of your videos or couple, and then I was like, okay, I'm not attached to the result. I'm fine, like if I don't sleep, I'm good. And then I feel like naturally like, yeah, I think I can just go to bed and I will just lie there and without any expectation. And then I was just like, I was falling asleep. So I think it's like whatever is meaningful to you at the moment, like when you realize that you are like, if you have something actually like enjoyable, that you will really get like pleasure from it, you can do it, of course. But if you like now you really don't feel like you want to like, or your body is ready to feel any joy, then just like do something that is meaningful to you.
Yes. So, and meaningful could be actually something like allowing yourself to feel exhaustion, allowing yourself to be sad.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
so
Not suppressing any like this kind of like negative emotions, because they are in a way like how you process trauma. And if you like forbid yourself feeling that, then this trauma piles up and it grows.
yes.
So
100%. That was a great answer there. And yeah, I think we covered our questions. So I want to say thanks for coming and sharing, Ellie.
thank you very much for inviting me again.
You got it. It really helps so many people. So I'll talk to you soon, and be well.
You too. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.